All right, it is 7:02. I'll keep an eye on anybody trying to get in, so I can admit them as they come in. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Cool. So welcome to the 2025 Red River Gorge Climbers Coalition open meeting. Before we get started, just want to let everybody know that we are recording this meeting. So just keep that in mind as we go on. If you have questions and don't want them on a recording for some reason, feel free to email us offline or off the meeting, and we can get to those. Otherwise, if you have questions, you can use the chat and Q&A functions of the meeting. Tara, Taylor, and Angel will be looking at those and putting them in a Word doc for us to look at that we get to. And we will get to all those questions at the end. So we'll just hold them for the end, and we will go from there. All right, Jake, anything that I forgot there? I think that's it for housekeeping stuff. No, we'll get into it. Okay, so I'm Curtis Rogers. I am the president of the RRGCC. This is my first year, which means this is my first open meeting. So glad everybody is here. I want to thank everybody for coming out. We're going to go through this presentation. If you've ever done this before, it'll be similar to previous years, with the exception of a lot of new things have happened in the past, really even in the past just couple months. So we're pretty pumped about everything going on with the coalition and climbing in the red. And we'll get to a lot of that stuff, and we'll get going. So like I said, I'm Curtis Rogers. Just go through this list real quick. We have Jake Ellis, who is the vice president. Brian Ogawa is the treasurer. Angel is the secretary. Amber Garvey is board member. Kat Runner is board member. Cole Mutual is board member. Jeremy Ranzik, Matt Froelich. Sam North, Tara DeCamp is our newest board member. And then we have three staff. Billy Semick is the executive director. Tara Taylor is the marketing director, and Curtis Gale Dyer is the land manager. And then Bill Strachan, who I believe I saw is on here, is our executive director emeritus. So he's the guy that we go to when we have questions about, how did you do this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago. He's kind of our rock that we lean on to answer a lot of questions for us. And it's always good to have him in a meeting, including this one. So we will get going. If I click on the right slide, there we go. So the agenda, we're going to do it. We did the introductions. We're going to talk about mission and strategy, talk a little bit about our board and committee structure, talk about some goals, and then we'll move on to some of the updates from each category. So we'll talk about membership. We'll go to our committee reports. We'll talk about the finances and donors. We'll talk about the dates coming up this year. And then finally, we'll get to Q&A, which again, for folks joining late, a couple folks just joined, we will do that at the end. All right, so mission and strategy. This hasn't really changed much, nor should it. For those of you who don't know, there's a little timeline over here on the side, but the coalition's been around since 1996. Shannon Stewart Smith and some folks, including Bill Strachan, who I just mentioned, founded the organization, so we're coming up on 30 years. The mission's always been the same. We're dedicated to securing and protecting open and public access to rock climbing in the Red River Gorge, and then also promoting the conservation of the environment on the lands where we climb. So our strategy has been, to secure high quality rock climbing, whether it's public or private, and secure community, various different things, which Jeremy will probably talk about at some point too. In the past, secure means buy. Now, in this kind of new age, it could mean get easements, or it could mean sign different varying agreements with landowners to make sure that we have access to that climbing. So it doesn't just mean buy anymore. It just means make sure that those climbs are safe. And then number two, make climbing sustainable for climbers and the environment. So we don't, you'll notice when we talk about these new acquisitions, we're not just going to open up the doors and tell everybody to go out there and have at it. We're going to try to do it in a sustainable way. We're going to open it slowly. We're going to open it with trails first and belay bases first, because we don't want to go out there and destroy this place that we love. And then number three, provide provide exemplary stewardship of the natural environment on the lands where we climb. Kind of same thing. We have a conservation committee and stewardship committee takes very seriously protecting the land, animals, plants, everything on our property. And then for educating climbers about access issues, encouraging them to take ownership and to be responsible for their behaviors and the impact that we have as climbers. So again, the mission and strategy has remained the same and hopefully will continue to remain the same. So this slide, if you've ever been on this meeting, it's looked the same for the past couple of years. So how we're structured, obviously we have the board, but then we rely on well, first we're all volunteers except for Billy, Curtis Gale Dyer, and Tara Taylor, and even Curtis Gale Dyer coming on as a part-time land manager. I meant to mention that earlier. He's our third paid staff. So those folks are paid. Everybody else is a volunteer. Board members, committee members. You'll see on these lists, committee members with stars next to them. Those are volunteers who are non-board members. So we have quite a few committees, and we've changed these up in the past year. And there's two different types of committees. There's the operational committees, which is fundraising and membership. These are the folks who are looking for ways to fund what we do, whether it's grants or tap takeovers or helping Billy and Tara put on Riot or Oktoberfest. Those folks are deep into that and are working on those issues. Operations, and Jake is the chair of the fundraising and membership committee. Operations is Brian Ogawa. He's the head of that committee. That's where we get into the super interesting stuff like accounting and rules for the organization and policies and also storage of documents. It's a lot of fun, and that's what we do in that committee. Marketing communications. So last year we started a full-time marketing director, and that's Tara Taylor now. So that committee is really people that she relies on to run ideas by them, put out quality material, and as you can see, and she's done a great job being with us so far of putting out really high quality social media images, things like eventually merchandise, redoing the website, all that kind of good stuff. The governance committee is the only one that doesn't have volunteers on it. It is strictly board members, and that's where we talk about things like staff policies, job reviews, performance reviews, legal issues, really kind of the internal workings of the organization. And then we go into functional committees. Those committees, will go through those real quick. Access and acquisitions, that's pretty self-explanatory. There are talking about issues like Ashland, Cliffview, future acquisitions. We talk about access to climbing on the Forest Service land, all those types of things, trails. They get handed off to conservation and stewardship, but the Access and Acquisitions Committee works hand in hand with the Conservation and Stewardship Committee on that. And then the Conservation and Stewardship Committee, like I mentioned, this is all. Can you all hear that vacuum now? It's really loud. I'm sorry. They're cleaning my office right now. Okay, I think we're good. I might tell, if I stop away real quick, I'll just go tell them if they can move somewhere else real quick. The Conservation and Stewardship Committee, they're doing things like working on the trails, assessing environmental damage, erosion. We talk about things like treating hemlock trees for the woolly adelgid, invasive species. All those types of things happen in that committee. And then education and outreach, Kat Runner is the chair of that. It's where we're doing things like outdoor climbing trips, events at gyms, Gym to Crag. This past year, we got to take some kids out from Lee County schools climbing. All the community outreach, just really showing that climbing's for everybody. That's what that committee focuses on. And then again, we have those three staff members: Billy, Tara, and Curtis Gale Dyer. All right, I'm not going to go through all of our strategic focus because a lot of our presenters have these in their slides, but just want to let you know, every year we get together and we come up with what are our goals for this year? What are we trying to do? What are the things that we want to achieve in 2025? And so each committee comes up with them. Sometimes they carry over. Sometimes they're 1 to 3 year goals. I actually watched our meeting from last year earlier today, and I was kind of shocked. Sometimes when you're in it, it feels like it's moving slowly, but watching the meeting from last year, a lot of the things that we talked about being our goals for 2024 were achieved. And I think that's a huge testament to the team of people that we have. Billy, Tara, Jeremy, Jake, our whole board. It was kind of fun to watch that and see everything that they've gotten done in this past year. So I'm not going to go through all these because we are going to talk about them here in a second. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Billy to talk about our membership program. If you see me step away for a second, it's to tell somebody to stop vacuuming. I apologize.
Yeah, so our membership program continues to go strong. It's been growing ever since we started it, and that's thanks to the support of you all, our members, and hoping to continue to grow that by another 20% this year and continue to grow our donor base. And that's something that we can base our budgets off of and forecast a little bit better, have a bit more consistent income, which we use for staff, for mortgage payments, for land management, all the above. The tiers 1, 2, and 3 will stay the same as they have every year. The shirt has changed, and that's thanks to some input from all of you. I know Tara put out a survey on that, so you can see it's a dark green and orange this year. And we added 2 new sponsors to the membership program last year as well, Fizzy Advantage and the Hideaways. So if you're not a member on here, definitely consider doing it. It helps support the coalition and all the work that we do, especially Access, which is up next.
That is. Thank you, Billy. Sorry. Let me go back. And yeah, we'll hand it over to Access and Acquisitions with Jeremy.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I have been updating this slide the last few years, and there's some new numbers this time. So if we look at how climbing has been growing in the red, the 98 Brono guidebook had around 1,000 routes. Ray Allington's first guidebook in 2005 had about 1,300. Red River Climbing now has 3,700, and I'm calculating that at least published or documented routes, because I know there's more than that out there, are at least 4,400 or so. And what's great, if you look at the pie chart below, is how much of that is owned by organizations that have secured the property. So obviously, Coalition in Muir Valley, there's the biggest locale after that is the Forest Service property. And then there's a number of climbs that are still on private land. And if you look at the chart on the right, we've got routes by access, and Open Secured is the one we want to see the most of, and it's continued to grow at 2374 by my estimates now. Open Secured is good. Open Unsecured is good, but that risks going away. And the Forest Service is currently in that count. So, and the reason is rules could change. Rules around access, rules around new route development, as we've already experienced, can change on us. Limited access would be places that are open to the public, but you need a permit, and limited permits are out there, are available, and then closed routes are as they're stated. Unfortunately, the closed routes grew a little bit this year with what has happened with the zoo climbing area. We're fully aware of that situation, and we'll be working to explore options as time goes on, but also want to give the landowners some space, because that's what they've asked for. Go to the next slide. So this strategy comes from our mission statement and in the coalition's overall strategy, which is first to secure access to the highest quality climbing opportunities and then make it sustainable. And then ultimately, we want everyone, including everybody on this call, everybody who visits the Red, to be a a steward of the land when they go visit, whether they're on our property, Muir Valley, the Forest Service, or on private land. And that's key to maintaining access, particularly if it's open and unsecured access. In the hopper, despite some of the really big wins that I'll go over this year, there are still 2 more opportunities out there. I would rank them both at a medium probability, and as I might describe later, these things can fluctuate from high to back down to medium or low, but right now both of those are in the medium zone. So it's possible there'll be another announcement later this year or early next. And that really speaks to the objectives for 2025. As we came into 2025, we had not closed on the Ashland property yet, and that was our number 1 on the list. And I'd love to close one of the other 2 opportunities before the year's out. We need to implement a development framework for the newly acquired land and continue the framework that we've put in place at Cliffview. As I go through a sort of a recap on Cliffview Recreational Preserve, I'll explain sort of that framework and maybe how the framework for the Ashland property, the Cave Fork Recreational Preserve, will be slightly different. House Bill 114 is currently in the Kentucky Senate, and it will be heard tomorrow in the Economic Development, Tourism, and Labor Committee. We expect that it will pass the committee and go back to the Senate floor for hopefully 2 more successful readings and passage by the Senate, which would send it to the governor. It looks promising, although nothing is guaranteed. The importance of that is by explicitly putting climbing in the recreational use statute and including cliff faces as an example in the definition of land. It really provides a more confidence for private landowners to allow access and limit their liability. We want to work on improving communication and outreach. I think the zoo is the prime example of the challenges we face there. And, I don't want to ignore that, but that's something we'll keep working on. And then it kind of goes hand in hand is educating the public on how to approach bolting and whose land are you on when you are, and what are the rules for that land, and address route development issues. We put this in place in 2022, but I just want to remind everybody that if you're developing on coalition property, we strongly ask you to read and sign the memorandum of understanding that is available. It's on our website. There's a link there to the section on our website about route development and bolting. The guidelines and recommendations there, we spent a lot of time on that, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in developing or is currently developing on a property to sign it and read it. And if you have questions or comments, you can reach us at access@rrgcc.org. All right, so some of the good news this year. So we were able to negotiate a cliff face climbing and access easement in the newly acquired property that is near Cliffview. It's called the Reserve at Cliffview, and our nomenclature is going to be the Cliffview Recreational Preserve. The easement provides access 20 feet above the cliff and 40 feet below, and follows basically the cliff lines. And there are 30 or so cliff faces, and by our calculations, that's about 3.5 miles or 27 miles of 27 acres of cliff line. We worked with private landowner Ian Teal on this arrangement. It was done at no cost to the coalition other than the cost to draft and file the easement. So this was a really huge win. Obviously it is a relationship that is beneficial to the coalition because we were able to establish open public permanent access. And at the same time, for the donor, it creates recreational opportunities for the land that is going to be developed for residential or cabin infrastructure. We are hoping to roll out access to this property in 2025. Some of that is going to be contingent on how quickly we can get parking lots and trails in place. But believe it or not, between when we announced this in September and now, there's over 170 routes have been put in, trad routes and sport routes alike. So keep your ears peeled, if you will, for news on access. It's going to be a bit rugged, just because the infrastructure is not in place for vehicles and to the degree that you might experience in other places. But we'll put information up about that as we go forward. So route development framework. First time the coalition has really attempted something like this. First, I want to be clear that the coalition isn't approving routes or weighing in on the validity of where a route should be or how it should be developed. And that isn't changing whether we look at our new property or our existing property. But we are making recommendations on what kind of hardware is appropriate. And in this case, I was able to negotiate with Ian for him to provide the hardware. So the hardware that has been used at Cliffview and will be used in the future at this point has been provided by Ian Teal. And there really is sort of a higher level or standard requirement there that because Ian donated the property, it's very important to him or the access to the property, it's very important to him that it be done with sustainable hardware. That's being distributed through Johnny Neville. And if you're interested in learning more about that, if you're not developing there already, there's a link to that there. We've had a huge number of interested developers and a number of folks out there. If you are interested in that process, you'll learn more on the page. The developers created a GroupMe messaging forum. So before I get into Ashland, how might the framework for Ashland be a little different? Obviously, the coalition is not going to be providing free hardware. You might look to the Fixed Gear Initiative, however, to look at discounted stainless steel hardware, and I would recommend that you do that. But we are going to ask you to sign an MOU, and we will probably provide some limited resources relative to maps and things like that on the property. But not to the same degree we've done at Cliffview, just because the context is a little different there with our relationship with Ian as the donor in that example. All right, so Ashland update details. 118 acres is probably even more than that because these are estimates. Obviously, you may have seen the signs in the past or even read about it on the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources website, but this property used to be in a wilderness management area that was provided to the state or the Commonwealth by Ashland. That deal was a very complicated deal that involved bringing a number of partners together to provide a single bid for that property. The coalition portion of that property was cost about $1,650,000 or $1,650,000. Fortunately, we were able to get $1,450,000 in grants. So really impressed with what we were able to get done there. The idea that a purchase of this size with today's property values was able to be done with only a couple of $100,000 out of the coalition's pocket is pretty amazing. This acquisition created the new Cave Fork Recreational Preserve, which is based off of Cave Fork. The good news is Cave Fork Road, at least if you come in from 11, is in fairly decent shape and is maintained fairly well by the county. If you come in from the south, be prepared for some rough driving. Miller Fork expanded, so there is a whole host of existing climbing that is north of the current PMRP. It's highlighted in red on the northwest portion of the property. And then further up on the Miller Fork branch of Miller Fork, so the right side further north, we purchased two portions of bottomland. There is probably some cliffline in there. It may be developable, but not probably of the quality of the rest of the areas. But there will be a parking lot that will be accessible from the road off of 11 that leads to the current Lee County landfill. It's going to be two-wheel drive accessible. We will build a trail that will put you into the northern part of Miller Fork. It still might be a bit of a hike to get to certain crags, but it will be a new 2-wheel drive parking option. Timing on all of that is going to be released later as we work through budgets and how we find the folks who with the heavy equipment to get that done. If you're wondering, like, how did all this deal come together? What was this structure? Well, again, through our work with Ian Teal on Cliffview and that easement, we were able to build a group of partners, if you will, loose partnership really, to acquire the property. The way it was structured is Ian's company, Highlands of Red River Gorge, actually bought the entire piece of property from Ashland. And then there was a simultaneous transaction with the coalition, the Ventura family, and 11 other folks who had come forward during our campaign asking for assistance, who were willing to assist by buying some land. So coalition had $110,000 out of pocket in cash that we actually fronted the down payment for the whole deal. We got private loans of $591,400. Those are actually in place. We haven't paid them off yet. Thank you to Jordan Wood, who helped us with that, and another donor who wanted to remain anonymous. We were able to access $350,000 from the Imperiled Bat Conservation Fund. That fund is maintained by the Kentucky Natural Lands Trust, and the grant recommendation came from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because of the endangered Kentucky arrow darter being on part of this property, as well as it being bat habitat. Confirmation exactly where bats are is not something that we've worked with them yet on, but it will be part of our forest management plan. We won a $600,000 grant from the U.S. Forest Service Community Forest Program. This is a highly competitive grant. It's the first time that a climbing organization has won a grant. We happen to be out of the grants that were ranked, very highly ranked as well, so that there was a lot of traction around this project, and the Forest Service was very excited for this win for us. So that was great. And then literally the day after we closed on Ashland, we won a $500,000 grant from the James Graham Brown Foundation. We will be working through some of the grant requirements around that between now and June, and some of those funds will likely be used to pay off the private loans we have, and some will be used to get some of this infrastructure in very quickly. So I won't go through it, but I listed a few of the crags that we know about that exist. There is potential for hundreds of additional routes. I wouldn't be surprised if someday it gets up to the 400 or 500, maybe even more than that. And then finally, just wrapping up what I mentioned on the route development framework is that my committee, the Access and Acquisitions Committee, will be working on that. Billy's going to have a lot of influence on how we get that done as the executive director. It's going to be community driven, as in the past. The coalition is not going to drive this. We will be providing what resources and assistance we can, but it's up to the community to develop, as it has been on our properties. But we're going to really push people to follow and to sign on to and follow the best practices and recommendations in the developer MOU.
Thanks, Jeremy. And obviously you all can tell that Jeremy's put in a ton of work on these projects. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it now because they put it on their website today that Jeremy won the Access Fund Award for 2024. So here in a couple of weeks, we'll be going out there, and I think it's the second time in 3 years somebody from the coalition has won it. Curtis and Audrey have won it before as well. So yeah, they put it on their website today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said anything. But yeah, we're super proud of not just Jeremy, but again, the team of people that are working to keep climbing open here is pretty incredible. So speaking of which, we're going to go to back-to-back Access Fund award winners here, and we're going to hand it over to Curtis Gale-Dyer.
Okay. There we go.
here's kind of just a basic gist of some of the numbers from this year. We get about 2,000 hours of volunteer work has been done this year. Measured, probably have been maintaining about 23 miles of trail, about 1.6 miles of road. Next slide. So some of the main highlights from 2024 is the trail workshop we did at Drive-By. We did that in cooperation with the Access Fund. We're trying very hard to turn this trail workshop into something more of a regional event, to bring in other experts from other areas so we can really share a lot of ideas and really work on trying to dramatically improve what we can do in terms of conservation and trail projects. Some of the major projects we got done, one of the biggest wins we had this year with the help of the Access Fund and grant money that we got to pay for them was Chaos. For the most part, have stabilized that whole area at Chaos and have now been able to move on to Drive-By. And if anybody's been out to Whipstocking, they've seen some of the work we've done there, a little bit more work, and we will have that actually shaped up a little bit better. We've also done some work out at Office and Unload due to the popularity of them this year too. We again had climber stores here both in spring and fall. They've continued to be a very good resource in terms of helping us educate the climbers in terms about the land they're climbing on. We've also been continuing to work on treating some of the hemlocks, specifically in Miller Fork with the for the woolly adelgea. We've now, from what I looked at when I had mapped it, probably roughly covered an acre of land just underneath monastery wall. We'll probably have more continuing this year. Maggie has been very big advocate and been able to do a great job of helping us move that forward. So this year we're still working on trying to plan out the Trail Skills Workshop. Things have been changing dramatically at this point due to the fact that the recent purchase for with Cave Fork is kind of changing things up for me a little bit. But we're still moving forward with the climbing stores that will be here again in the fall and spring. We still definitely will continue work on, hopefully this year we'll be able to finish up the last of the rock work at Brona Wall, which will get that completed and have that area kind of checked off, along with maybe some more at Drive-By. There's some other small projects we're trying to complete also at Nursery and Monastery. Been heavily working on the last month, walking the area in terms of Cave Fork and trying to evaluate where some of the bolting will be happening, along with looking at some of the crags that are already there and trying to figure out trail systems. We started even mapping out some of the trail systems both in Cliffview and in Cave Fork, and we'll be having trail days coming up here shortly to work on both areas. That is the main highlights I have at the moment. More slides for me.
Cool. Thank you, Curtis. I'll throw in there before we go on to education and outreach too. You know, a couple of people have asked. We are, you know, keeping in close contact with the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife. You know, when we're doing our conservation stewardship work and also access. You know, even this morning we were on a call with the Forest Service, working with them. You know, and even that they asked us is, hey, have you seen anything that needs to be taken care of? You know, as far as trees down. You know, military wall. There was a lot of stuff down in the most recent storm. So obviously our land is a priority, but we're also working hand in hand with them and making sure that those areas are open as well. So now we will hand it off to Kat for education and outreach.
Hi, everyone. Overall, our values and vision haven't changed for this committee. Our guiding core principle is that the outdoors are for everyone, and we want to make actionable efforts that preserve climbing and increase access to climbing for all climbers, no matter who you are. Next slide, please. 2024 was great. Overall, like all of our events and objectives were met, they increased. We had 18 Jim to Crag events. We did 2 outdoor trips where we take, usually partner with a group to take them outside. One of the groups this year was some kids from the Lee County Rec Center. We also gave away 2 scholarships to Oktoberfest, hosted an outdoor clinic there for LGBTQ climbers once again, had a great turnout with climbers that care. Overall, like all of our objectives and goals were met and were even more so exceeded. So next slide, please. And now looking toward 2025, there's a lot of objectives that we can go toward in pursuit of reaching our values and vision and following that. But we believe that these 5 are the best places to put in our energy and time into achieving those goals. And in doing so, we also are like trying to keep in mind the challenges that not only this committee, but also our conservation committee and potentially other committees may encounter as we navigate the current political landscape as well. A few of these goals and objectives here can be grouped into kind of like one goal where that's a more concerted effort to increasing our outreach both in the immediate local community. So that's Lee County, Beattyville, Powell County, Wolf County. And then also regionally, expanding our regional like presence with local community groups. So working with groups who frequently like bring climbers in and connecting with them to do Jim to Crag presentations, connecting with them to have more trail days and just really kind of immersing ourselves with their programming as well. And we're going to do that by continuing to do Climbers That Care. We want to continue working with the gyms that we've partnered with, but we also want to really try and expand it to do it more often throughout the year. We also want to continue and plan to continue having our Rock Lake trips, which is our outdoor kind of like component of education and accessibility, where again we partner and bring people outside to the Red River Gorge and more Jim to Crag. Also working to kind of like develop programming that can fill the void of Climb Late. And figuring out the best way to do that. One of the other things that we like really focused on and implemented was developing and supporting the diversity, equity, inclusion, specifically on the board and within our staff. And one thing that we've already completed this year is that we had 100% participation, pardon me, of our board and staff completing trainings in cultural humility. And that's what we have planned for this year.
Cool, thank you, Kat. Now we will hand it over to Billy for fundraising and events.
Yeah, so fundraising, events, these two kind of got lumped together as Curtis mentioned in terms of our committee structure, and a lot of that comes from our 3 big events each year. I'm sure most of y'all have been to at least one of them. They're a lot of fun. Rocktoberfest, Johnny and Alex Trail Day, and Red River Reunion, which now includes our Ryad Red in a Day competition as well. Rocktoberfest in 2024, we once again broke our fundraising goals and records for Rocktoberfest as an event, which is awesome. And again, thanks to you all for coming out and supporting, and all of our awesome sponsors who make that event happen as well. It was the first time we also did a Wednesday night event. We kicked off at Miguel's with the Struggle Climbing podcast, and Black Diamond sent Babsy and Jacopo to participate in that, and we had a great turnout with that. Country Boy came out too, so it was a good kickoff to the week. And Yeah, JTD. We had another. It was a record turnout again for that event as well. We did 13 different projects across all of our properties, and yeah, again, great sponsors to help make that event happen and support all of our volunteers. With Lago Linda Hideaway supporting, hosting the event, and then Miguel's providing lunch, Red River Rock House providing dinner, West 6 and Ale 8 making sure everybody stays hydrated throughout the day and throughout the evening. And yeah, we brought back, I guess for the second year, we did kind of a locals day for folks who live down in the gorge and maybe can't get out on the weekends because they're busy working at one of those restaurants that we all love. And yeah, so we got out to Amarillo Sunset, redid the deck access there and part of the staircase, hoping to finish that up this year as well. And Ryad, it was the second iteration of that competition. Everybody was really psyched about that, and we're going to continue to do that event. It's been a really awesome kind of community engagement, seeing how much people are excited to go climb 31 pitches in a day, not even in a day, in like 10 hours. So really been cool to see how excited everybody has been about that. So that's coming up in a month, April 11th and 12th. That weekend is Ryad this year. So we hope to see you all there.
Cool. Thank you, Billy. Yeah, these events, every year they just kind of keep getting better and better. And I think one of my favorite emails this entire year was a guy from Australia emailed us and said, "Hey, I'm planning a trip to America to go climbing. When is Rocktoberfest so I can plan around that?" And I think it's pretty cool when Billy and the staff are putting together such a great event that somebody in Australia is planning a trip to America based around that. Yeah, and same thing with Ryad. Even we're getting emails about, "Hey, I'm trying to plan my spring break. When is Ryad?" So, great job, the team there, setting up these events and making them fun for everybody. So now we are going to hand it off to Brian, who is going to talk about the finances and talk about some individual donors as well. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I know we've gone over a lot of great events, initiatives and programs and purchases that all of our committees have been working diligently on. Our committee has the super fun task that Curtis mentioned of making sure we can pay for it and forecasting on what we can do next. So just kind of a little financial wellness overview of the coalition. Our major income really comes from Rocktoberfest, our membership programs, and a lot of our corporate sponsors with other things sprinkled here and there. And in all three of those categories, we exceeded expectations. We increased our annual membership by 32%. Thanks to Billy and Tara's hard work, we got our corporate sponsorships up quite a bit, and Rocktoberfest seems to just keep growing. I'm not sure how we keep fitting more and more people there, but with all that being said, what this year does not reflect is the Ashland purchase, but what it does reflect is a lot of years of really good, diligent work to put us in a position, as Jeremy mentioned, land values getting more expensive, property acquisitions being tougher, and really putting us in a good position to move forward, whether it's Cave Fork and Ashland or the next purchase, just trying to keep building our operating reserve so when the next opportunity comes up, we can act. And then Curtis, you want to go to the next slide? And on the flip side of that, we have our expenses. Most of that is payroll. It's a pretty big increase from last year, but that's just because we added a full-time marketing director. So in 2024, we brought us all the way up to 2 full-time employees. We have contract services, which is another big portion, which is kind of just our legal filings, our accountants, a lot of professional services that went into the due diligence of Ashland. So additional lawyers, title searches, environmental assessments, things of that nature. And then our land management was only 10% last year, which went into a lot of tools that we had capital expenses for that are now owned by the coalition, which will be really useful as we start doing all the infrastructure on Cave Fork. As you can see, our total expenses by month really hover around those large events that Billy was talking about. April, May being RIAD, June, July being JTD, and then October, obviously, Rocktoberfest. So it kind of goes in waves, but we netted out the year with about 32,000 net operating income, and we're on pace to have another really good year in 2025. Next slide, Curtis. Like I mentioned, a lot of our funding comes from our membership, which is something that's helping us be more sustainable in both our operating and forecasting for when we're looking at all these new infrastructure plans, prioritizing different expenses. So I'm not going to go over everyone name by name, but just know your name's on this list. We really appreciate what you've done. It's, made all of our work possible. And this list keeps growing, which is great to see. And we hope next year that'll continue to grow. I believe there's one more slide, Curtis, of individual donors.
Yeah.
So these
go ahead.
These by far aren't all of our donors. It's just kind of the higher tier 1 thresholds, but we have a majority of our donors are like $5 a month reoccurring, and that's going a long way too.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. A couple of things I'll say too about this is, like I said, I watched last year's meeting earlier today, and we talked about the record amount that we've raised last year, and this year was about $30,000 more than that. And we couldn't do it without these people. So everybody who donates, whether it's yearly, through corporate matching, there's a million different ways to give. Well, we really appreciate it, and certainly couldn't do it without you. And two, I also just want to thank Brian, because trying to forecast when, like Jeremy mentioned, we got a $500,000 grant after we purchased Ashland. Brian's job of trying to target and forecast and really nail down the budget was certainly not easy in the beginning of this year. But we're in an incredibly fortunate position to have great financial health, and it's because of all these folks who donate. And so for that, I'll hand it over to Billy to talk about some corporate sponsors as well.
A lot of these come from, our Rocktoberfest sponsorship, but also, JTD and RIAD and all the folks in between who support the coalition and the work that we do. I want to give definitely a big shout out to Quantrell Subaru, who's been our title sponsor for Rocktoberfest for, 6 or 7 years now, and also Johnson & Johnson for their very generous matching program for some very generous donors that have been supporting the coalition with pretty large amounts of money too. And so definitely want to give those two some love there. And then also, as you all saw, Black Diamond, you guys all know BD. They're obviously like one of the biggest climbing brands in the country, in the world, and they've shown really incredible support to us through just looking at the Ashland campaign earlier this year, donating over $10,000 worth of gear to help get that kick-started and throw some swag to our donors to help support the coalition and the money that we need to pay off our mortgage and get our land management running. And then again, Cliffview Resort, they've been great to us, helping, host Rocktoberfest now with the ownership change at Loda, and, monetary support as well. And of course, can't go mentioning the Red without, Miguel's Pizza, the Ventura family, Red Point Barbecue. They've been really great to the coalition for decades, and along with all of the tourism committees in Lee County, Wolf County, Powell County. And yeah, the rest of them are on here. They've been great. Always love to see the growth of this slide and the growth of the sponsors that we get to Rocktoberfest and our other events too. So yeah, just can't thank these folks enough.
Thanks, Billy. Yeah, and again, a lot of this has to do with just a lot of the amazing events that Billy and the staff put together. These brands want to be there. They want to support it, and we're super appreciative of them. So that does it for the presentation part of it.